Hey, I'm sorry. I had muted my mic. I don't even know where I left off. Brianna, are you there?
Yes.
Okay. Did you hear anything I said or
I just heard the beginning where you said that you're going to wait for a few more people to come in, and that was the only thing
okay.
we heard. All right.
Okay. Sorry. I've been here sitting here talking and uh, muted muted the whole time. Sorry everybody. Well, good afternoon everybody and welcome to today's NCLUG Tech Talk from Bentley. Today we're webinar is focusing on ORD Best Practices for Geometry, where we share some tips and tricks for editing OpenRoads geometry. First, just some housekeeping rules to get us started. This is a presentation, so all attendees will be muted. And at any time during the webinar, if you have any questions, you can put them in the chat box and we'll try to address them as time allows or at the Q&A session at the end of the presentation. We will be recording the webinar and sharing it on our NCLUG website after the event, so you can feel free to go there and view the presentation. NCLUG is offering PDH credits to those who are registered for the event, but you have to make sure that you're registered online for us to be able to link your PDH credits to your PE license number or PLS number. After this session, we'll send out those PDH credits to those who attended the meeting and live in person. No credit will be given to those who view the presentation afterwards. As of right now, I'm not exactly sure where we stand with sending out the PDH receipts. We might be a week or two behind, but those are getting worked on them and should be out soon. So we'll follow up with you on that. And then just be sure to stay tuned to the end of the presentation. We'll do another drawing for a $50 gift card to one lucky winner. So hang around. And then now I can like to hand it over to Brianna Gamble of Bentley. Thanks, Brianna, for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Patty, for having me today. My name is Brianna Gamble. I will be kind of your course instructor today for OpenRoads Best Practices Geometry. I'm a civil consultant here at Bentley and do teach most of our courses that we have in ORD and project coaching. So I am going to bounce between a PowerPoint presentation here and actual ORD, and I can provide this uh, PowerPoint presentation at the end to Patty for those that would like to view it on their own. So today on our agenda, we're just going to give a brief introduction to geometry as a whole and the way it is viewed and interpreted by ORD. And then we're going to get started with how to import the best practices to import geometry into ORD. And then we're going to get into the design intent behind the design intent and design intelligence that we now have built in to every element that is created. And then I just want to go a little bit over file structure in terms of how ORD looks at and interprets all the different files that are utilized to comprise a 3D model. OpenRoads is different from MicroStation with the idea that it has built intelligence into every geometry element. So every line, arc, spiral, curve that is placed and drawn in the 2D space has intelligence. And not just the intelligence that we specify what kind of line it is. We've done that already using levels where you can identify by level what something is. Here now we are introducing rules and associations. And what that does is if you offset an entire element, it remembers and creates a parent-child relationship with that offset command. And we'll go into more detail about those design intent, but it's to get us to our 3D model and the rendering of our project more streamlined and more effortlessly. Uh, ORD also has some great features built into it that make the user uh, more aware of the command that you're in, more on top of making changes. So we've insert text handlers and text manipulators, drag handles. We now have an Explorer pane that is full of content uh, and that you can categorize, and search. We have in-place editing right here in the 2D Canva, and then we will talk about how there are now new clicks within the commands that will get you to the end result of that command. One of the first things that I am going to talk about is Connected Visor. If you have not opened ORD, it opens automatically, regardless of how you open ORD. And the beautiful thing about Connected Visor is it is a real-time resource for our users. It brings in the Learn server content, which is taught by consultants like myself and others. There is Bentley Communities, which is you all, the user, going and posting questions or issues and engaging with either technical support or members of our team to answer in real time and give you basically a blog of what to do. And now it's there for others to see. So that's Bentley Communities. And then our YouTube page has great short informational videos that walk you through step-by-step instructions on how to do certain commands within ORD. So I'll go over the Connect Advisor as well, but just know that this is a great resource for users as you migrate from MicroStation SS4, SS10 into ORD. So we're going to watch a brief video, and it's begun to play here, and you will see that Connect Advisor is built right in, and what it's going to do is have you select a software that we're utilizing, and then it'll take you to the Bentley's community page where you can then see the different type of wikis or forums that are posted, and you can search through and find either the topic that pertains to your issue or just informational videos on how to migrate certain things or where to locate this information in ORD that used to be in SS10. So there's a lot of great resources and functions built into ORD. Connect Advisor is one of those. And as it cycles through the rest of this video here, it's just going to show you some of the different ways that things are categorized. And I'm going to fly all the way to the end. And it's going to bring us back to Connect Advisor, and you'll see the opportunity for the Learn server. And you'll see creating horizontal tangent elements, creating horizontal curves, and create horizontal alignments. All of those are courses provided on the Learn server from Bentley that come with data sets and a PDF, a booklet for step-by-step instructions on how to follow. So it depends on what you're using and what skill set you're at, but there's beginning, intermediate, and advanced courses on the Learn server and on YouTube. So I'm going to slide my PowerPoint out the way here, and I now have ORD open. I want to point to where you can find the Connect Advisor up here in this left hand on the Quick Start menu. And if you come to File, it will take you to what we call the Backstage view of ORD. And you can come to the Help and find your Connect Advisor. But here on the Backstage view, you can also manipulate how ORD looks and feels. You can make it like it was in SS4 to make you more comfortable, but to make those changes, you do come back here to our Backstage, and under Settings, you can come to User, and here you have the ability to manipulate your standard settings. This dialog box should look familiar to all users. It's available in SS10 as well. And you could scroll down to your manipulator settings. I believe the default is the cyan blue color here. You can make it orange, you can make it yellow. When you see this and highlight something, that indicates to us that we are actually able to change that. Read only, still in gray. The selection color, some people select that cyan blue. I have it as pink, and you can make all of those same changes here. You could also come to settings and come to file and design settings. Since we are working with geometry, this is a great place to set your formatting, to set your precision, to look at your radiuses, the way that they're laid out. All of this information is pulled right from SS4, but again, you can come here and format any of your sheets to look and feel the way you're used to. So I'm going to come back to the front stage, and I want to zoom in on this secondary road here. And if I highlight, you'll see that this is an alignment. If I hover over it, it allows me to know that this is a alignment, a complex element. It has a name associated with it. But if you also hover over it, you can tell that that's in a reference file. When you come to what's in your particular file, you have the ability to see what we like to call text handlers. And those are here indicated in blue. And this is the new portion of ORD that allows you to manipulate in real time, manipulate on your geometry, and select from there the changes that you would like to make in an edit field. Again, if the text handlers do not come up, you can use your element selection to manipulate it and to turn those back on, to turn your manipulators back on. Element selection has always been a part of MicroStation. The beautiful part about it now is we have the ability to see it on every ribbon. If you're following along at the top of the screen, you see element selection. I know in the past sometimes it could get hidden behind things or lost, especially if you exit out. It is now here and will always be populated on every ribbon that we have available to you. So let's talk about the geometry that is in this file. We mentioned that one of the great updates to ORD is the ability to see in real time what is being built into your model. And one way that we do that is we utilize our Explorer pane. And if you're following along, that's down here in this lower left-hand corner. It also can be found on your home ribbon in the primary section under Explorer. And in most of the tabs that you utilize, you will see it over here in a more condensed primary section. And so the Explorer pane is now populated and pinned here on my left-hand side of the screen. And a lot is built into the Explorer pane, but what we're concerned with today is the OpenRoads model. So if you expand that pane, you will see the file that I am in is called Corridor London Road Complete. And if I expand upon that, we now have a way to see what is being built into our model in real time and categorized based on its feature. And so you have alignments, corridors, reference models, and site layout. I know that those are in this file by this little triangle that will allow me to expand. And under alignments, you see geometric baseline. That right there is a feature definition. That goes back to the design intent that we are building with each element. So when this element is laid out, or once it's laid out, you can come and assign a feature definition. Feature definitions are the what. So anytime you come into ORD, it is best practice to always set your feature definition to define what you are doing. And every feature definition has a feature symbology associated with it. It also has an annotation group, meaning an alignment that we've laid out in SS4, if you laid out an alignment, it would be CAD only elements. Here in ORD, when you lay out your alignment, you have the ability to now assign what kind of stationing will be applied to that alignment because of the feature definition that we chose. Up here on my screen, if you're following along, here is the feature definition toolbar. So if you come to the drop down, you will see the feature definitions that are available to you either as an alignment or linear. We're talking about geometry today, so we're concerned with the alignment features. These features are set by the workspace. So your workspace may have more developed or just these basic ones here provided by Bentley. but this is a geometric baseline. Then you have one for driveways, ramps, secondary roads, temporary roadways. When laying out all of this information, it pulls with it the level symbology, i.e. what it's going to look like. It pulls the information from it, how it moves through your model. And lastly, it determines what it is. It gives you a readily identifiable name for what you're working for, not just a baseline, but a driveway, ramp, or secondary road. So a lot of great information is stored here in our Explorer's pane. It's a great way to see and reference what is in your file and for you to understand and see how it is all laid out. I'm going to pull my PowerPoint back over. And I want you to see here, you can further expand to get down to the complex elements that are in your DGN. And it allows you to just notice underneath the complex element to assign a profile, stationing, and furthermore, you have all of the lines and fillets that comprise that complex element. So with this information, now it is all associated with complex element ramp C1. All right. And you can navigate directly to that element by right-clicking on it and click Zoom to. So there's a lot of great features built into ORD without having to do a lot of work. This here is provided right for us in the Explorer's pane, getting right down into what is in your file, what is in your model, and how I can review that information in real time. So again, all of this information is new. It provides like a container civil model, and it brings in all of the information. Now, some of it may be directly in the DGN in which you're working, and then some of it may be referenced. A great workflow that I'll discuss a little further when we get to file structure, but we put our terrain models in their own DGN. We put our corridors, and you may have several corridors within a project. You like to break those out into their own individual DGNs. And when you reference all that information in to create your model, it will be populated here in this OpenRoads modeler inside of the Explorer pane. The Explorer is a great reference and resource for you to tell exactly where you are. This was always available to us. If you're using the SS4 SS10, you can, on your task pane, click over to the civil model and see something very similar with your linear elements. We have now in ORD sorted it by feature definition and given it more categories for us to understand and be able to work through and find the information we are looking for. All right, so we're going to hop in now to our geometry and how we import our geometry. So you can import geometry utilizing any of the available file formats seen here, whether it's InRoads, GEOPAK, acai file, a land XML file. You have the ability to import that geometry into ORD. And it's going to utilize here that you see on the ribbon, the geometry ribbon, that import geometry function, and then you can choose and specify which manner in which you would like to import and from what type file type. This is a short video that's going to go through importing the geometry. Notice here, we do not work, let me make one little quick pause. The thing about ORD that is very different is we draw everything one-to-one. In the past, you would have a drawing, a DGN, and you could set the drawing scale, and then you could set a sheet scale. We've gotten away from all of that. Everything now in ORD is drawn one-to-one. Therefore, the only thing that needs to be scaled is our annotation. Secondly, We no longer need to open 3D files in order to view the model. You can now work in a 2D file and still produce a 3D model within your DGN. So we're just going to watch these steps here, and that's why they replace the seed file from a 3D to a 2D. And then let's continue. And so now we're going to watch as they import the geometry. And when importing your geometry, you have the ability to set the rules. And when you set the rules, it's going to ask you whether you want to import them based on the rules that we have. Oh, excuse me, I need to go up. And those rules are the information from how the relationship was built. So a rule is when I offset a line parallel, I have now created a parent and a child relationship, and a rule has been established. If I do not want the child to move in conjunction with the parent, I need to deactivate the rules. So we're going to see how that is done in another video, but here they're going to attach the geometry. And you see they used an ALG file, an alignment file, which we're all used to utilizing from InRoads. You may be a GEOPAK user, but here you can select and you see all of the alignments that are in that file. So in InRoads application, it used to show you all of these ramps. You can select which information you want to import. If all of them are not important, if you're the MOT and you're only working with the ramps, you can pull in information in which you need to utilize. And you also see here that there is a little box that says create civil rules. A best workflow is to toggle that off and then assign a feature definition, which will then assign your rules. You can import here and associate the rules based on the lines that are there, but I like to import and then assign. So you're going to see here that they do it both methods, neither which are wrong, more familiar for the user. But I'm just going to go ahead and click play for you to see how we work through that. So you can select the files in which you want, toggling on or off, create civil rules. They have hit import. I would utilize this method here and to not create the civil rules, allowing you to establish which information you want to import on your own, and then you'll find it here. So the first time they imported the information, they imported all of the alignments to bring in the geometry that we see. And the second import that they did was they imported and they only imported 2 ramps and they did not associate the rules to those. And now when you see, you click on the ramp and you have the ability to see that they have smart, intelligent lines and information built in to that ramp, whereas the other ones do not, because they had create rules toggled on. So now we're going to set the feature definition. If all of these are alignments and you brought this file in, a best practice would be to import it the way we just have. And now that you have all of these alignments in here, you need to set a feature definition. And so that's what they've done here. And visually you see it is now all the alignments are laid out in red. I'm going to let the video play out here for us. And you see that there are complex elements that we had already complexed in regular SS4 brought in, but they have the design information in that ramp here. You see the nodes that were associated? Oops, give me 1 second. There. I'm bad at this pausing thing. I apologize. And so what you want to do is when you bring in the information, depending upon how it needs to be utilized, if it has your design intent. So what they're going to do here is now bring in the other ramps and associate those rules. And you see here, now that it's created those rules, we have our nodes, and you have to come back and now assign your feature definition. But you have the ability to manipulate the curves and still maintain your alignment. So what we just saw when we were importing our geometry. So you can unpick and choose which alignments you bring in. That allows you to declutter or clean up and only focus on the information that you are utilizing. It also allows you to manipulate and choose, depending upon how you brought the information in, what needs to be done. So if you're at the final stages of your project, you can import the geometry and set your alignment. But if you need to continue to manipulate or build off of those alignments, I would bring in the geometry, and then I would also create the relationships and the rules. So creating civil rules, what does it mean? Rule geometry. It promotes the geometry to the DGN, and it allows you to edit it in the Canva space, in your viewport. And so in the past, if you wanted to edit a curve, take it from a 700-foot radius down to a 500-foot radius, you had to uncomplex your chain. You would have to insert a new fillet at the radius desired, recomplex your element, and then re-import into either GEOPAK or InRoads. You no longer have to do that. If we import the geometry and you have toggled on create civil rules, you now have the ability, and you see down here in this pane, everything in orange is a text edit, is a text handler that allows you to edit. So if you select on here, it's 200 meters, you could select on that, that's the radius of the curve, and you can manipulate it in real time. If you notice, and it's hard to see, and I apologize, down here in gray along the two tangents is the line direction and the length. Those fields are grayed out because in order to manipulate the tangents, you have to manipulate the curves. The tangents were there first, you then inserted your curve, and now because we are building every element with intelligence, it said, well, those two tangents are there, but they are bound and have a relationship to the curve. And so in order to manipulate the two tangents, you must manipulate the curve. So we in ORD have created ways in which you are able to manipulate in the Canvas stage parts of our geometry. But I like to stress that when creating the geometry, whether you did it in ORD or you imported it, you now have to be mindful of the way in which it was created because relationships are built. All right. So unruled geometry. So that's ruled geometry, meaning we cannot change the tangents because they are in a relationship with the curve. Unruled geometry basically brings in read-only elements. And in the last video, you saw that where it just gave you a start and an end. It was a complex element, but you had no ability to manipulate. You had no ability to change the curve data, the curve radius, or any of that information along that complex element. So when you unrule geometry, you basically pause those associations. The only difference between unruled geometry and SS4, what we used to do in SS4, SS10, is the ability to then toggle back on that geometry. So you can unrule it and then you can re-rule it. It's not the same as creating just CAD-only elements with no intelligence behind them. What ORD does is it maintains that relationship and it just puts it on pause. And lastly, what we saw was a feature definition being applied. And what that means is we are telling ORD what we are doing. We imported all of those lines. Fantastic. You and I, as the user and as the engineer, knew that those were an ALG file that we imported and that what we were looking at was an alignment. However, we never told ORD that's what it was. And so a feature definition does that. We assign it as an alignment, and now the model reads we have an alignment within our model, or in our case, alignments. All right. After you import, it is great workflow to then assign the feature definition upon importing. Before you share the file with anyone or before you begin building, that way you have set the foundation, started that design intent, and then you can expand and build upon from that. Here's a blown up version of what I was speaking on. You notice everything here in orange are text handlers and are able to be manipulated. Everything in gray are fields that are read only and do not have the ability to change. You also see here these nodes on the screen. Those are drag handles. Anywhere you see those, you can physically click them and drag to relocate portions of the alignment. All of these features are new to ORD, but very helpful for the user to build a certain level of comfort with modeling in ORD. Again, here we show you the ability to, all the handles here in blue are able to be manipulated, and they come with text handles or drags. All right. And now we're going to watch a short video here that talks about design intent. And so we're going to assign a feature definition. We're going to build an alignment. And I want to show you how we begin to teach ORD the design intent in each element that we create. Oh. So as they draw the line, you'll notice that we are utilizing the drawing functions and lines here on the geometry ribbon because that is what we are working on. You will still see the line capabilities in drawing production and the drawing tabs. Those will create your CAD only elements. So if you want to create information that has the smart data associated with it, you need to utilize these commands here in the geometry window. So when we use this feature definitions toolbar, you're going to toggle on that first command, which uses the active feature definition. So when you come to construct a line, you don't then have to assign it post creation. You can do it all in one step. So I set the feature definition and then I begin to construct my line with that applied feature definition. And now you see here, it has snapped to an existing line. This existing line had no smart information associated with it. It was a CAD element, or excuse me, just a line. I want to show you how now this line gets associated with the alignment utilizing the snap command. And basically what it's shown here is I created this first line, snap to a point. I created a second line, arbitrary in space, and snap to this next point. It says snap is used, but design intent not maintained. I want you to just notice how when you manipulate one of these lines, the rest do not follow. The first line that snapped to it did. The second line, Now, when I resnapped with the design intent on my feature definitions toolbar, I had the ability to now turn on my persist snap. And when I snapped back to that line, it brought with it my design intent. So there you go. And now as you manipulate, it can be reapplied by using the persist snap. That's the smartness of ORD. That's the ability that we were lacking in MicroStation to be able to create those smart associations. So what we just saw was design intent through snaps. You were able to snap directly to an existing line and create a relationship. And then when that existing line moved, my line went with it. So this is how ORD starts to build and introduce design intent, introduce relationship building between our elements. If we were to construct a fillet between our two tangents here, we could utilize the construction line you see on the screen to adjust the radius because we have snapped all three of these lines together because of the design intent and the relationship that we have created between the elements. So as you're creating geometry, a good best practice that if you have your tangent information that you can snap to or lay out, I turn on my use active feature definition. I then turn on this gold chain link. That's the chain command, meaning for every line that I create, it will create at the chain and continue from that last point and snap to the next one, so I can continuously make a line without having to reselect the command. And that entire alignment, all of my tangents will have the feature definition geometric baseline assigned to them. ORD gives us the ability to then take that relationship between all of those, complex it like we've done in the past, and create geometry. But utilizing that geometry, we now have the ability to create other relationships, such as your edge of pavement, your curved face, end conditions. All of those things have the ability to be built based off of the relationships established here by starting our alignment. So again, this is just a snippet of what the feature definition toolbar looks like. This is the persist snap, meaning you could turn this on to reassociate the design intent. And then the one here, the chain link that I spoke on, will link as you continually stay in a command. It will link all of those lines that you create or arcs that you create together with the feature definition. So that's another way to establish a relationship. And I'm going to spend the last few minutes here talking about file structure when it comes to your not just geometry, but in terms of overall for ORD best practice. In the past, we've used secondary applications, InRoads and GEOPAK, to create alignment files, TIN files, DTMs, XIN files, all different kind of file formats. And you used to need to keep up with and maintain all of those in a great directory to be able to share the information with others. We have gotten away from that now that ORD has the ability to draft and model directly in the software. We now have to categorize and structure our information a little bit differently. And so one of the best practices that we utilize here at Bentley is putting each feature in its own file. So I have here to your right a sample of a file structure, a folder file structure that we would utilize. Our geometry is in its own DGN, just as it has been in the past. No longer do you have to set a scale for each. You can have them directly in that geometry file, reference it in, and then the user that is referencing in your geometry can scale at whatever scale they need. But then we also have corridor files. We didn't talk about corridors today, but that's the next step in creating your full and complete model. And if you notice here, we have a corridor for every roadway within the project limits. That's a best practice to break out the information by roadway that's that's going to be applied to. If you also see in this list that we have super elevation by roadway, it's the same philosophy. If you're going to share the information with others, it needs to be in its own DGN. You do not want to share your live file with others that could potentially become corrupted or manipulated by that user. So if you create super elevation shapes for each roadway in their own DGN, you then have the ability to now reference that DGN into your file and utilize it without disrupting the original copy. We do the same for cross sections. Name boundaries are the way that we cut sheets. You can call that plan sheets or plan boundaries, or some people have a boundary file. That's basically what name boundaries is in this case. But it is a good and best practice to separate that information out by the feature, by what you're doing. And then when you're ready to create your model file, you can create a container file with all of these referenced in, and it will populate your 3D model. So lastly, I just want to show you an example of what that looks like. And if you come back here to ORD, we have a corridor for London Road, complete with alignments and templates, files from the corridor. If there was super elevation, you can attach it here. I'm going to turn on all of that for you. And you can see your super elevation shapes. Let me come over our 3D view. And let me attach. I want to attach Coincidence World because, again, we create and draw everything here in one-to-one. So I don't want to have to import it and try and attempt to rescale it. I want it to bring it in one-to-one in real time and space. So I'm going to use Coincidence World. Then I'm going to select Open. And now we should see our corridors. Oh, I'm not sure why that is coming out like that. It should be. But a full complete corridor will give you a rendering both in your 2D and in your 3D space of what is built into your model. Here we go. I was trying to reference in a 2D component into the 3D space. But now you see here it represented in my 3D. And this isn't inevitably our end result is what you want to see. You want to see all of your roadway segments with their corridors modeled, laid out in a 3D view. And again, I want you to notice that we are in a 2D file. And so I called this Corridor London Road Complete because I wanted to reference in everything into this file in order to build my 3D model here. So I just want to quickly show you what happens if I turn off everything. You see the only thing in this file is my corridor. Okay, everything else I referenced in to build my model. So again, a good file structure is to take your super elevation, your corridors, your alignments, all of that information, have them all in their own DGNs reference it into a container file to build your 3D model. So with that, I am concluded on my presentation. I'd like to now turn over to questions. I've seen the chat window kind of filling with a few questions. And now I'm going to do my best to come through and try and answer.
And Brianna, I think a lot of those, Oak Tavanon from NCDOT's been kind of putting some information in there. I'm not sure if that's, I'm not sure if
Good.
that's all questions or if he's just kind of relaying some of the current information that DOT's doing. Oak, did you want to particularly ask some questions from that? Maybe you can help filter.
Yeah, there was a couple questions about. I see that model kind of interests me. That how did you put the MSE wall in that model there?
This here.
Yes.
Okay, so the MSE wall actually was modeled in its own file, and I have it referenced in here. So you create a corridor for the abutment walls and model those, and then they are brought in separately. So I can actually turn off the geometry in this file, and you should see that here they were modeled in their own. Oops, sorry, giving anybody a headache there. I'm not the best at the rotating tool, but they were modeled in their own file utilizing our corridor modeling and our corridors and our modeling commands. And then I referenced it into this file to show you how you build a completed model rendering. So each of these are modeled independently. And what I've done here is brought them all together to show you what it looks like when a corridor comes together.
Is that a civil cell or something that's delivered in the Bentley workspace?
No, actually, let me open the file for you. I believe I have it here. So we do have the opportunity to utilize civil cells. Most of the civil cells are not laid out by Bentley. They are going to be designed by the municipality. So you do have the ability to utilize it as a civil cell. Here, is it a cell? No, it looks like what they did is they placed a, let me see. No, it is a template that has been placed, a surface template. So if you notice here on my screen, I've come to the properties pane. And if you look next to what they've called it, that right there identifies it as a template. And I can show you if you come to the quarters tab. And there are different templates here, but if you go to the modeling detailing, they've used linear and surface templates to model the wall. So it is not a cell. You do have the ability to utilize civil cells. And again, those are more laid out by your governing body, which in this case is North Carolina DOT. If there was another way to double check is you could come to your Explorer pane, come to your OpenRoads model here, and you can tell if it's a civil cell based on this information here. If it was a cell, it would have a drop down. It would identify what cell, what library it came from, etc.
Can you provide this DGN file to us? And I'm interested in just grabbing that.
Yes, actually what I
Surface
can do
template.
for you is, let me show you. We have a, I have another PowerPoint open. This is actually all available on our Learn server. So let me show you. On the Learn server, it is in our, so on our Learn server, I've pulled a lot of this information here. So that was a great question. Thank you. It led me right into this segment. This is the information that I pulled it from. So any one of these on the Learn server, quick start for OpenRoads geometry, creating and editing alignments, creating ramps, and geometry, excuse me, you can find most of the information that I talked about today. This particular file that I have up on the screen here is in the quantities and earthwork. So if you're on
Nice.
Yes, if you're on our Learn server, it is under quantities and earthwork. There's a data set available, and there's also a PDF for you to follow. So I'm gonna show you that because that's where I pulled it from. So if you come to Bentley Trains on the Learn server, they'll be laid out, but I'm just gonna show you what the name is. So it's quantities and earthwork, and then this is the data set that comes with that module.
Okay, nice.
All right.
Thank you.
So that is available for you. And then if you're in the PDF, it can walk through some of the information. Now, this PDF is more suited to do quantity and earthwork information and to show you how to do that. But the file, since you were looking for this particular file, it is within this module. So you can take it and utilize it however you'd like. But the course itself is over quantities and earthwork information.
Okay.
Great questions. Thank you.
If anybody else has a question, you can feel free to type it in the chat box or raise your hand.
I have another one.
Yeah, go ahead.
We're looking at doing hearing map production with ORD, and I'm having a difficult time trying to find a placement for a microstation place shape and place, create shape with flood method in microstation. How do you do that in ORD, I guess, to maintain that if your alignment moves, your shape that you create? Is there a civil place shape command, I guess?
And you're referencing into can you start the beginning of your question one more time? I just want to make sure I know exactly what you're speaking on. So you said you have created a flood map and you have readjusted your alignment, and now you want to know, is the boundary that you originally set dynamic to move with the adjustment of your alignment?
Yes, pretty much the shape that we create.
Okay. Yeah, so there are certain things that are dynamic by nature. Um, so like if I create an alignment and I change my radius from 1,000 feet to 700 feet, my tangents will repopulate. The stationing information will re-update according to the adjustment in my alignment. If I had a template run along that corridor, using that alignment, it would all then be changed. However, if you are creating a closed shape and are not creating the relationship to the actual alignment itself, it will not make the change. You have to establish a relationship between the alignment that you created and that command. So I would implore you to double check. I'm not with our drainage team. We have a team that works solely with drainage. I work more on the roadway side. So I'm not 100% sure if there is a command, but what I can tell you is that anything that you create, if you want it to be dynamic and for it to be manipulated with an alignment, you have to associate it with the alignment. So either the way that you create it or the way of the command, if the command is available. So if you create that shape and you use like offset and taper method, right? And you single offset of entire element, you have the opportunity to then, set your feature definition. You can make it if you can find a category that fits here. If not, you also have the ability to put it on like a construction line. And then if you move your alignment, that dynamic closed shape will move, but it's based on how you create it. So I don't know if there is a command to create that shape, but what I do know is that you can create that shape utilizing our offsets and tapers, associating the right appropriate feature definition. And then if you move the alignment, that closed shape that you created will move as well.
Well, those shaped like the shape of like the roadway pavement. We color it in with regular microstation as yellow. So the boundary are still geometry element that has rules associated with them. But when we create the shape, we use a regular microstation command. flood that area. So
I would say then that probably means you just need to complex it instead of using the regular microstation command, probably use it complexing the geometry here. Even though if your line is not technically geometry, this is the complex to complex an element like that to secure and save those relationships. If you complex it using the microstation elements, but it was built with ORD smart data, the complexing will just literally do that. It will just connect them all together. It won't establish a relationship with them all together.
okay,
Does that
okay,
make sense?
yeah, I'll try that because we did it with just the regular microstation command, but the boundaries were a civil geometry element that has rules attached to it.
Uh-huh.
Soon as we moved the alignment, everything moved except for that shape. So we were having some issues with trying to, maybe we have to complex that shape, I guess.
Yes, I want to show you one thing before we get off here. Let me figure out what the course is. We have a course that goes over that, and I want to just give you the name of it, just so you can, beyond centerline geometry, that's it. Okay, so it's going to give you something like this, and and so here is going to open a graphics versus features. And all I want to show this to show is that you can complex this element or any element utilizing microstation commands. But what you want to do is when you do create it, and like you said, since it had rules established with it, even if it's not geometry, you can complex it using this complex by geometry element. Even if it's not in alignment, even if it's like a curve face, or in your case, a flood boundary. It's just telling you that you're complexing the element using ORD, not CAD tools.
Okay.
All right. So if you have more questions about that, look, this is a great file, another course beyond centerline geometry to dive into, and it can give you more information.
Okay. Thank you.
You're very welcome. Well, right here, I'm a little over, so I just wanted to say thank you for everybody for listening, and I'm going to pass it back to Patty.
Yeah, thank you, Brianna. We really appreciate all that you taught us today. And hopefully maybe we'll have you back and do some more. I think there's some more questions on this that maybe we can follow up at some point.
Yes,
But we appreciate it.
great. I'd love that. And everybody have a great rest of your week and stay safe and
Thank you.
healthy.
And for everybody else, I guess PDHs, those will be sent out. PDH receipts for attending today will be sent out within the next couple of weeks. And then stay tuned. We got some more Tech Talks upcoming. And for our drawing today, our winner actually is Oak. And that was
Nice.
random. I did not pick that. It was like a randomizer. So congratulations, Oak.
Thank you.
And we'll be following up with you. But thanks, everybody, and be on the lookout for some more events. And I just want to remind everybody, too, you should have gotten a thing for survey, for NCLUG survey, just about our Tech Talk. So if you could just fill that out, I'd appreciate it. We can help us give you better programming and programming needs. But thanks, everybody, for joining.
And I left my email address in the chat. If you ever have a ORD question, or Oak, if you want to text or email me your particular question, I can at least find someone on our drainage team to help resource your answer.
Okay. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Have a blessed day, everybody.
Thank you.